asking for a volunteer. Something pretty low commitment, not gonna lie. Volunteer. Alright, come on up. Alright, thanks, Art. I'm gonna make you stand right here. Take off your shoes.
This is the worst time. I'm so cold.
It's okay, thank you for being brave. And you can take a seat now. Nope, you can sit back down in your seat. Yep.
Are you serious?
Yep, that's it. That's it.
Can I get a shoe?
Thank you, Audrey. Appreciate it. That was unfortunate. I didn't see what shoes you were wearing behind that. My bad. Thank you. The past couple weeks, we've been talking about God's plan for the church and how the church, which is us, should be responsible for taking care of what God has entrusted to us. And one of the things that Janet mentioned that God has entrusted to the church is the responsibility of raising up the next generation. Because we have influence over people younger than us, right? Because you remember when you were little and there was that cool college kid in your life and you felt they were the absolute coolest person on the planet. I had people like that. And when I was little, I just wanted to be like them. That's all I wanted. And now I'm in college. I'm not as cool as I hope to be, but we made it to college nonetheless, so we're going to just call it a win. But now, as college students, we have influence too. Everybody has some type of influence. Among family, among friends, the sports teams you're a part of, the clubs you're a part of, you have influence. And even if you're not the leader of any of those things, you still have influence just by being present. Because your presence matters and your influence matters. Your influence has great power, but just like Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility, right? But that influence is going to disappear if nobody's there to take the reins once you're gone. And instead of having an exponential impact for the better, you'll just be a one-hit wonder, gone just as fast as you came. We've been told as college kids, you're the next generation, but what about the fact that the next generation already exists? We're the generation of the now. We are already here. There's people coming after us, high schoolers, middle schoolers, students. So what are we going to do about that? When I think of the word apprentice, I think of somebody who's studying a certain skill or way of doing something, like a craftsman, glass blowers, welders. They're all learning some type of skill, and they're professions that use the apprenticeship model to teach others. But the word apprentice extends further than just a trade. It represents somebody, teaching somebody a way of life, maybe. An apprentice is just anyone who learns a way of life or a skill from someone else. That's what an apprentice is. And Jesus had an apprentice called Paul. He had a few, but Jesus was training them to spread the good news of salvation and redemption and reconciliation. And Jesus tasked him with making disciples and baptizing them and teaching them more about him. And just like Jesus' apprentice Paul took an apprentice named Timothy. In the New Testament, the second half of the Bible, closer towards the end, Paul is writing a letter to Timothy, and Paul's encouraging him to do what he has trained him to do. And in the letter it says in 2 Timothy 3:10, "You, however, you know my teaching, you know my way of life, my faith, my purpose, my endurance, persecution, sufferings, what kind of things happened to me in Antioch and Iconium and Lystra, the persecutions I endured. But as for you, continue to do what you have learned and what you've become convinced of, because you know who you've learned it from, and how from infancy you've known the Holy Scriptures, and you're able to make wise through salvation the faith of Jesus Christ. All Scriptures God-breathed and useful for teaching, correcting, training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work." As a mentor to Timothy, Paul was trying to encourage him by saying, "Timothy, I've taught you what I know. I've been apprenticing you, so continue to do what I've taught you, because you know more than you think. Use what you know to train people, to help people, correct people." And he was saying to Timothy, now it's your job, since I've trained you how to do good works, to go and do the same, to go out and train other people how to do good works. Paul wrote that to Timothy, but in your head, replace Paul with somebody who's mentored you or coached you. And what if that person said the exact same thing If you were at church this morning, Adam, the youth and family pastor, said that kids and students should have 5 people pouring into that kid's life and investing in them. And what if you were one of those 5? Because I remember being in middle school and having a small group leader who really impacted my life and changed the trajectory of my life and really put me on a path to following Jesus better. And those leaders believed that in the place I was in middle and high school, that I had big influence. And you know who was one of my small group leaders? A college-aged girl, a college kid. Investing in the next generation is so worth it. And one of the most awesome things I think I get to be a part of is co-leading a small group of 7th grade girls with Elise Green. And the girls that Elise and I lead, they challenge me to be a better follower of Jesus. It's deepened my faith more than any conference, any retreat, more than a lot of stuff. And although deepening my faith was not the intended result, it's definitely a benefit. And middle schoolers are awkward and funny and hilarious and strange and unconditionally loving. And without realizing it, they become one of my favorite parts of the week. And we have so much fun together. Like, there was this one time where we were about to play a game, and this girl comes up to Elise and she says, "Hey, I want to play the game, but can you hold something for me while I play?" And Elise says, "Yeah, sure, of course." So Elise reaches out her hand, and the girl puts in Elise's hand a very compact tinfoil ball. So Elise is standing there with this tinfoil ball, right, staring at it. She goes, "So, what am I holding?" And the girl says, "Well, my parents won't let me have a real hamster, so I'm pretending that this is a hamster, and I've had it for about 2 weeks now." So there Elise, this girl that's playing the game is holding a tinfoil ball. And I knew no context, so I walked up to the situation to just Elise holding this tinfoil ball. And it was just too funny, and I kid you not, every Wednesday night, something just as funny, if not funnier, happens, just like that. And Wednesday nights, I love them because I get to hang out with them and share with them the little bit more about Jesus that I know than them. And that's apprenticing. And if you're not actively in a relationship with somebody younger than you, then I encourage you to find a relationship like that. It's so worth it. And if you would like to find out how you can get connected to FCC Kids, middle school, or high school ministry, you can ask Janet sometime after this and ask how you can get connected or take a step towards that. I'll make the commitment even easier. Ask if you can just shadow, just try it out. They'll let you. And there's people in the room who serve in some of those areas. Like, you could ask Elisa or I, or Ari, or Jaden, or Blake about middle school, or if you know Kylie, you can ask her about kids ministry. But maybe you're thinking, you know, kids just really aren't my thing. You know, they kind of make me uncomfortable, like, no thanks. And I want to recognize that and say that's okay. It's totally okay. And if you find yourself in that boat, you can still have the mindset of how important the next generation is, because that mindset is the overarching mindset. That's what matters. That the next generation matters. And you can still be invested in somebody younger than you. You take somebody a grade or 2 or 3 younger than you and take them under your wing. So seniors, find a sophomore, juniors, find a freshman, and invest. And invest with purpose. Because you can make all the difference to them, and you can leave a living legacy that way. So use what you know to train people, whether it be coaching a little league team, or tutoring, leading a small group, or giving students rides places, or buying an underclassman a coffee every now and then. Use what you know and share it. Growing up, I had a family friend. Her name was Christina, and she worked for my family, and we were actually really close to her. So when she passed away, my parents were invited to her funeral. And my mom recounts how honoring and beautiful and rich the service was for her, but this was not just a normal funeral. You see, Christina was a lay preacher in the church where she served. So she had high spiritual influence over these people, and they really respected her and they loved her. So now that she was gone, there was a vacancy in that place. And normally, it was the responsibility of the child or her daughter to step into her shoes and fill them. But for a variety of reasons, she wasn't able to. So, as was custom, if there was a vacancy in the church, the person leading the funeral took Christina's shoes up front. She took her cloak, put it up front, her cross pendant, and placed up front. And then the person would proceed to say, who's going to take her place? Who's going to fill her shoes? Who's going to take her place and who's going to fill her shoes? And they wouldn't stop saying it until somebody would physically come up, step into that person's shoes, put on their cloak, put on the cross pendant, symbolically representing them taking on the spiritual responsibility of that church because they knew how important that role was, and nobody was allowed to leave. Nobody dared leave until that role was filled because that role was too important to leave empty. Those shoes were too important to leave unfilled. So, what are you going to do when you step away from the place where you have leadership and influence? Are you training your replacement? Are you training them well? Who's going to be in the wings when you're no longer there? What if you disappeared tomorrow? Who would be ready to step into that role? And who would take your place? And who's going to fill your shoes?
Thank you, Megan. That was awesome. I think Ari can come get her shoes now. So I love that. Thinking through who is going to take your shoes.